Hey, what's going on, everyone? Hopefully you're doing good. Today we're going to be discussing alternatives. So the purpose of this specific topic is just to talk about whether it be alternatives to incarceration, or instead of incarcerating people, what should be another idea, or if we are going to incarcerate people, is there a way to do it where they can still come back and be rehabilitated as opposed to becoming worse offenders and things of that nature. So in the link, the first link that I provided in the syllabus, I actually provided a video called How Norway Designed a More Humane Prison, and then prison inmate, we get puppies, ice cream, and flowers. So basically the point of those videos is they're talking about a specific prison that exists out in Norway. It's called Halden Prison. Halden is basically this new redesigned kind of model of what prisons should probably start looking like if we're hoping that our incarcerated population comes back and they're a little more rehabilitated, right? So from the architectural design to how the rooms are formed to how programming is done in the facilities to the things that somebody can do, like let's say maybe learning how to play an instrument or something of that nature. The reality is that we've seen that in the current criminal justice system, how it is, it's not working, because apart from people who commit murder and rape and things of that nature, the majority of offenders fall under other categories, right? Which means at some point they're going to come back home. They're going to come back into the community. The average overall prison or jail sentence, everything combined together, is 10 years. So somebody does 10 years, they're coming back at some point. So they're going to be sitting right next to you on the bus, right next to you on the train, things of that nature. So you want to make sure that for your sake and for the sake of the people that you care about and your children and elderly people, that these individuals are able to function and be productive coming back into society. Oftentimes we think that, okay, these are individuals that we just cast away and they're in exile and we'll never see them again, but that's not true. The majority are going to come back into the community at some point. And if they're not able to be rehabilitated or even be successful in finding employment or going to school or something of that nature, that becomes everybody's problem. The taxpayer loses dollars on that, whether it be on property damage, whether it be on, overspending on policing or whatever it is. It is in everybody's best interest to think about how this affects everybody on a personal level. This does not just apply to somebody who lives in the hood. It doesn't apply to just somebody who's from the Black and brown community. It applies to literally every single person who's a taxpayer and who lives in the United States, because you're going to, out of 30 people, you're going to bump into at least one person who's under some form of community supervision, past, present, or future. So Halden Prison, they basically, like I said, they have a design that's catered towards helping incarcerated individuals be rehabilitated, get ready to go back into society and to be functional people, right? So I'm gonna let y'all click on those links. You can check that out for yourselves. But what I'm going to do is get into some of the other links. One thing that I want to talk about first is, so the Bureau of Justice Statistics in 2018 released some of the recent statistics on recidivism. Recidivism is basically the tendency of somebody being released from incarceration and then going back in. So now the question is not so much, okay, are they going back? It's, yeah, if they're going back, when is it that they're going back, right? And there's different factors that go into that. So we're going to look at the screen real quick. So this is off the Bureau of Justice Statistics website. In 2018, they released this report. This is showing you a 9-year time frame post-release from 30 states in 2005. So basically from 2005 and 9 years after. It shows that the majority of, or at least the largest percentage of recently released incarcerated individuals, they have a higher tenacity to recidivate, meaning to go back into prison, go back into jail, basically in their first year. Now, we can see that throughout the years, it actually drops significantly. But at the same time, they're only using a sample. The denominator for the annual percentage was 400,000 plus state prisoners. Okay, so remember we have 2.3 million incarcerated individuals in general, and right here they're focusing on prisons specifically. Okay, so the numbers between prison and jail, of course, are going to be different to whatever extent, but generally speaking, they're not going to sway too dramatically. If we're looking at total arrested within 9 years, right? So, of course, during the first year, and even breaking it down by sex, by age, and things of that nature, race, the majority of people doesn't matter. If we're talking about what year people are going to reoffending, is going to be on the first year, right? Now, of course, the second year, it drops off, but it's still a significant enough number where it's felt. But we start seeing that once it hits the third year, fourth year, like, it becomes harder and harder for somebody to recidivate, in the sense that there's different reasons for this, right? If somebody is already out for 2 years, 3 years, does it really make sense to have already spent that much time getting reacclimated to society just to go back into what a lot of people would consider a jungle? Probably not. Where at least when you first come out of prison, and you already just got the smell of that environment, you know what you're dealing with. Once you come out, it's like you could recidivate in a day, you could recidivate in a week, in a month, and you still got that fresh feeling of, oh, I just did time. Because again, remember, prison is 1 year or more, right? If you spend a year, at the very least a year, doing the same thing over and over, like, you pretty much developed a habit. They say it takes 21 days to develop a habit. Imagine a year, right? And imagine people that are there for years at a time, and then they come out. Different reasons why somebody could recidivate. They come out, and it's not really spoken about like that, but a lot of individuals are homeless once they come out. I've interviewed different people who are incarcerated, especially when I was in Rikers. But even people who are on parole, probation, when I worked in the halfway house, and a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have nowhere to live. I had clients and participants who, when they were on parole, they were living in shelters. And, a lot of people who come out would actually rather just reoffend and get locked up again than to be in the shelter, because if you're talking about staying in the shelter, it almost has a very similar energy as jail, minus the protection and the watch of correctional officers. You're not in individual cells, unless it's a shelter that got rooms and stuff like that, but not a lot are built like that. Usually it's just one big wide open space and there's a bunch of beds, but obviously anything and everything can happen at that moment, and that becomes a security issue. Where at least in jail or in prison, you can have a cell. Again, you have the watch of guards, correctional officers. Even if it is a wide open space, it's like somebody, unless they're dirty, right? They're gonna most likely be able to intervene and at least stop you from getting killed at the very least. And so a lot of people do reoffend for that reason. I've interviewed people that they'll say that they lived in the park, they lived in the train stations, you know what I'm saying? And if they're not homeless, then there are a lot of people that are living with their grandmother, who is probably like 70, 80 years old by the time they get home, probably with their parents, or probably with their girl or something of that nature. But it becomes very difficult because, especially in communities of color, there's a cultural stigma that the man has to provide. So, which is fine and all, but if that pressure leads to you doing illicit activities just so you can say, I'm providing, you pretty much just fall back into the trap of incarceration, And once you're incarcerated, or once you offended once in your life and it's on your record, employers have the legal right to discriminate against you. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what makes it difficult, because it's like, if you're already somebody who's not schooled or trained on how to, you know, go about day-to-day life, you know, using general life skills, and then now on top of that, you have a record on you, how easy is it for you to find a job unless you got a plug or you got to connect to something like that? So it becomes very difficult for people to come home, especially if they're homeless, and start thinking about, oh, I got to find a job. Excuse me. If they're homeless, the first priority is, I got to find a place to sleep. If I don't have a place to sleep, what good is it for me to have a job? Or how can I even have a job if I don't even have somewhere to sleep? Like my personal life is in shambles. And the only way that you can have somewhere to sleep, unless somebody's providing whatever to you, is for you to have a job. And if nobody's hiring you because you have to check a box saying, oh, I offended, or, you know, they get to check your background and things of that nature, it's just a circle and cycle that doesn't end. And so we want these individuals who we know are coming back home to basically get reacclimated to society. When society says, we don't want you, we are shunning you and exiling you because of one act that you did when you was young, when you was in your teens, your early 20s, 10 years ago, however long it was, that's going to follow you for the rest of your life. You will never have the opportunity to be forgiven for that. And so it makes it very difficult, the pressures, the stigmas. Then if you got locked up for drug offenses specifically, a lot of times you don't even get federal aid. You can't even apply for public housing. You can't get food stamps or certain federal government assistances and things of that nature. If you want to go to school, you can't even qualify for financial aid. You don't qualify for FAFSA if you have specifically a drug charge. And the irony of it is that out of all the different crimes, that's probably the one you could argue is the most entrepreneurial and business oriented and business minded, right? So it's like, at the end, it's a trap that just keeps people in there. Yeah, you know, of course, committing crimes, you know, it's wrong, it's immoral, whatever, you know. But at the same time, you have to understand both sides of it. You can't just look at it as, oh, this is the law and that's it. Not every law is a just law. Not every law is a reasonable law at that, because again, as we talked about early in the semester, you know what I'm saying, through the documentary 13th, slavery used to be legal. There's a lot of things that have been legal that we have to question, is this really the right thing to do? You know, the war on drugs and other things of that nature. The reality is that if being a good citizen isn't paying your bills, is not giving you the opportunity to work and do things the right way and things of that nature because you were born into poverty or you were born into a family that, you know, the system already focused on, you know, locking up, you know, father figures who are black and brown and things of that nature. Now you grew up in a single parent home and your mother got to struggle. It's like, it's easy to look at it from the outside in, from the outside in and say, oh, it don't matter. You got to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and this and that. But it's like MLK said, you know, they want somebody to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but you don't even have boots. So how are you supposed to do that? So it's understandable once you step in the shoes of a lot of these individuals that, yo, survival, right or wrong, that's what it is, because clearly nobody's looking out for this side of the community and things of that nature. So it's always important to look at it from both sides, because let's say that you're in disagreement with what I'm saying, right? You still have to always learn the other person's perspective if you're looking to XYZ, whatever XYZ may be, okay? Let me share the screen again. So yeah, so, you know, we can see throughout the years, the recidivism rate drops off. Of course, when you first come out of prison, you're gonna have new contacts. You're gonna have new quote unquote friends that you made while you was inside the wall. So you probably have more temptations, more opportunities than you did before to commit more crimes and to make more money and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of different reasons why the first year is going to be the highest in regards to recidivism. And to be more specific, they say within the first 5 months, right? If you can make it past the first 5 months, you have a better chance of making it through the year than if you get locked up, obviously, in the first month, 2-3 months, because there's only so long that a person can last not being able to provide for themselves legally before they have to resort to some kind of crime and things of that nature. So, you know, Halden prison, going back to that prison, they focus on trying to equip their incarcerated population with some of these general life skills that they need. It's obviously not an easy task, but it's something that has to be done because they already recognize that a lot of these individuals are going to come back to society. And even murderers, people who took people's lives, depending on the severity of the situation or like the intentionality of it, right? Like how orchestrated it was and things of that nature, they may not even get a life sentence. They may get like 20 years or something of that nature, because at the end of the day, that's still a person that exists out here. So, you know, that's an argument that they present. And there's actually prisons out here in the United States, I believe in North or South Dakota, that have already started implementing some of the practices that Halden State Prison, that Halden Prison has implemented. There's people out there that believe in this concept of abolitionism, right? If we look at the term abolitionist, basically is somebody that's looking to free individuals, right? Back during the time of slavery and things of that nature, you had abolitionists who basically were looking to free slaves and things of that nature. Frederick Douglass was an abolitionist. His mentor, William Lloyd Garrison, he was an abolitionist. And they basically were freedom fighters and fought for freeing slaves. Now, of course, the term is being used here in a different way, but basically we're just going to run through some points on regards to what prison abolitionists are, and this is from the prison policy website. Imprisonment is morally reprehensible and indefensible and must be abolished. In an enlightened free society, prison cannot endure or it will not prevail. Abolition is a long-range goal and ideal. The eradication of any oppressive system is not an easy task, but it is realizable, like the abolition of slavery or any liberation, so long as the will to engage, so long as there is the will to engage in the struggle. So basically, this is for somebody who believes that prisons are just morally corrupt and wrong in general, right? Obviously, if you're not in that stance or that position and you feel that there are people that belong in prison, then of course this wouldn't be something that applies to you. But there are people that just believe, yo, we should just do away with prisons, period, because no good can come out of it. All right, which there's an argument to be made on that side and on the other side as well. Everybody can make an argument. The message of abolition requires honest language and new definitions. Language is related to power. We do not permit those in power to control our vocabulary. Using system language to call prisoners inmates or punishment treatment denies prisoners the reality of their experience and makes us captive of the old system. So, which that does have validity to it. When you call somebody an inmate, that's basically another way of referring to them in a derogatory term. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying the N-word, for example, you're saying inmate, because again, we already learned this in class that the current prison system is basically an extension of slavery back in the day, right? The 13th Amendment makes very clear that, you know, slavery, non-voluntary servitude shall exist in the U.S. or any jurisdictions of it, except under where somebody has been duly convicted. So just that amendment itself makes clear that slavery under these conditions is still permissible. Like they're saying it very outwardly and outspokenly. So if we take those two ideals and those two words, and obviously, obviously it's not the same exact thing, but it's just a more quote unquote watered down or mutated or whatever version of that term, because it's basically, I guess, in a way, like throwing shade, like, we're not going to say this directly, but we're going to say it indirectly. Yeah, and you basically know what we mean by it. That's what the powers that be are trying to establish. And so language definitely is important, because at the end of the day, you have the ability to devalue, a person's existence simply by referring to them by a certain term and name and things of that nature. Perspective 3, abolitionists believe reconciliation, not punishment, is a proper response to criminal acts. The present criminal justice system focuses on someone to punish, caring little about the criminal's needs or the victim's loss. The abolitionist response seeks to restore both the criminal and the victim to full humanity, to lives of integrity and dignity in the community. So basically putting more emphasis on the humanity of the offender and on restoring what was lost to the victim. Abolitionists work with prisoners but always remain non-members of the established prison system. Abolitionists learn how to walk the narrow line between relating to prisoners inside the system and remaining independent and outside that system. So basically not being peer pressured into being yes men to everything that that somebody who's incarcerated would say, oh, you got to say yes to this, right? It's not about just going against the grain for the sake of going against it. It's okay, we have an extreme and radical idea, but this is the reason why, right? But it doesn't mean that we're going to conform to everything that somebody behind the wall thinks is applicable or right. Abolitionists are allies of prisoners rather than traditional helpers. We have forged a new definition of what is truly helpful to the caged, keeping in mind both the prisoner's perspective and the requirements of abolition. Perspective 6, abolitionists realize that the empowerment of prisoners and ex-prisoners is crucial to prison system change. Most people have the potential to determine their own needs in terms of survival, resources, and programs. So basically allowing the individual to feel self-reliant, right? When somebody's incarcerated, you're basically being fed your 3 meals. You're being told when you need a shower, when you need to go to rec, when you got to go to court, law library. Like basically you're a baby all over again. Like you're like a child all over again. And you could be 30, 40, 50 years old and somebody's telling you what to do and they could be younger than you. So you have to, which this is a valid argument in itself, you have to restore the independence, or if they never had it in the first place, you have to teach them how to gain that independence. We talk about one of my previous bosses used to say, we talk about rehabilitation, but what about habilitation, right? Like how can you rehabilitate somebody who's never been habilitated? They never had it in the first place, so you can't give back to them something they never had. You got to give them it or teach them how to have it first before you can read anything. Perspective 7, abolitionists view power as available to each of us for challenging and abolishing the prison system. So basically the idea that power is, it's combustible. Like it can literally it could come out of nothing, right? Like all it takes is one individual to start something and literally a movement can get formed out of that. All right. So it's not something that somebody can just buy, right? Like, of course, people do it all the time, but you could start off on a grassroots level too. You could start off just organizing within your cell block or within your tier or whatever, and then it becomes bigger than that. Abolitionists believe that crime is mainly a consequence of the structure of society. We devote ourselves to community change approach. We would drastically limit the role of the criminal injustice systems. We advocate public solutions. So basically things such as capitalism is what they're referring to. Like there's certain structures that exist in society that make it difficult for people at the bottom to be able to get out of the hole. And abolitionists believe that it is only in the caring community that corporate and individual redemption can take place. So basically, whether it's just you or whether it's a group of people, it takes a village, like they say, right? So it takes different working pieces to make a car move. It's the same thing with, trying to move a society and move people forward. And now, I'm not going to spend too much time on this right here, but this is basically an alternative as well. When somebody's incarcerated, instead of having them be in solitary or, basically just having them be idle in general, there's programs that are available. This was the program that I worked in when I was in Rikers Island. It was called ICANN, Individualized Corrections Achievement Network. This was started back in 2013. Mayor Bloomberg had funded and pushed this initiative forward at the time. And basically, this is a partnership between the Department of Corrections and the Fortune Society and Osborne Association, two nonprofit organizations that focus on reentry, and they've been doing it for decades already. Every year, and this was, at the time, this is like 2015, this document here. Every year, ICANN serves over 6,000 incarcerated individuals. And basically, it shows you kind of like the different things that it focuses on. Through partnerships with Hostos Community College and Solar One, ICANN partners introduce hard skills training into VCBC and EMTC, which is some of the facilities that belong to DOC, to the Department of Corrections. The Fresh Start program is a 36-hour culinary arts class. This was introduced in some of the facilities as well. And there's a 14-point agenda, which basically is used to assist in kind of keeping track of progress and things of that nature. So what the ICANN program would do is it focuses on employment. So whether that be computer classes, which, to be honest, I never seen those while I was in there, but it is what it is. There was culinary art programs. There was OSHA 10, even OSHA 30, electrical, plumbing. Those were there. Work readiness, life skill groups, interview and resume preparation groups, things of that nature. Those things we would have to take in order to be acclimated into society. And like you would actually have to take life skill groups, I think like a certain amount of each kind of session in order for you to even qualify to get the OSHA certification, because that certification outside is like $100 and basically they get it for free. But you have to fulfill the life skill requirements first. You have to do anger management, cognitive behavioral therapy, financial literacy, health and wellness. They have classes for different things, substance use and mental health referrals. Like even though it's harder to get drugs or to consume drugs while you're incarcerated, obviously drugs still do make their way inside of there, but the assumption is that there's no drugs. That's the way that the program operates. Even though we know what jail culture is and what happens in jail culture, at least like the people that really, really know about it, the executives and the higher ups, they would like to behave and speak as though it's not happening. So, we refer these services for if in the past they have used it, but presently they could still be doing it while incarcerated. Which it happens all the time. Like I've walked into housing units and, like it smelled like weed and stuff like that. So it is what it is. Assessment of housing needs. So basically homelessness is, as we talked about before, family parenting. So, parenting courses, family relationships, things of that nature. If people need assistance with their government ID and benefits, they will get assistance with that. Getting birth certificates, social, things of that nature, then creative writing as well. And then I provided the websites for you for Fortune Society and the Osborne Association. A lot of the work that you could do there is as a case manager and things of that nature. But you could do that. You could be a program director. You could be a risk assessment interviewer. Like there's different positions that you could get from that. But basically these programs, they're supposed to be alternatives to keep somebody from reoffending, or from, at the very least, if it does anything, it's keeping people from engaging in violent activities while they're incarcerated and things of that nature. In Rikers, we always used to say, the idle mind is the devil's playground, right? That's just a saying, you know, and it's true. Like if you don't have anything to do, like you're going to find something to do, and it might not always be the best thing to do, especially if your priority is just trying to make it through that bid, no matter how small or big it is, you know, you're just trying to make it. So I'm gonna leave it right there. Of course, I talked about homelessness and how that is a fact to take into consideration. A lot of people, unfortunately, who are incarcerated, or even when you see them on the train, people who are homeless, like they probably just came home from jail or have had some kind of past history or what have you, you know, and it's just the unfortunate side of how our society operates in general. So if you have any questions, of course, feel free to reach out. I'm here, and stay safe in the meantime.